In this video, I'll be using PioSolver to review a hand I played at 100 NL on Ignition. It's a 3-bet pot. I check raise the flop, and I barrel the turn. And let's find out if I played this hand like a bro or like a pro.
8-9 suited is good enough to open here out of the hijack for sure. I guess it's more like the cutoff with this guy sitting out. We get 3-bet. Smallish size here. Of course he has position. Don't love calling 3-bets out of position, but I think like these lower, I guess like 7-8 would probably be a better call than 8-9, but 8-9 still makes a pretty good call here.
All right, so first thing we're going to do here is check out our pre-flop play. So as mentioned in the video, we say that we're basically opening from the cutoff with 8-9 suited. These charts I have here are for 100 NL. This is a simple pre-flop, so just going to be double checking my pre-flop play, making sure that I didn't get anything too terribly wrong here. So cutoff open range, looks like 8-9 suited is a 100% open. Let's make sure we're meant to call the button raise here. Oh, looks like 8-9 suited is actually a pure fold. Interesting, we're calling 7-8 suited here. Yeah, so I mentioned in the video, I think 7-8 suited is probably a little bit better than 8-9 suited. Yeah, I guess the reason for it would be that our straight draws are less dominated. When we have 7-8, for instance, like 10 Jack Queen. Yeah, 10 Jack Queen. When we have 9-8, we're sort of setting ourselves up for a pretty sick spot, right? If we build a huge pot there against the 3-better, like the 3-better has 16 combinations of ace king, and it's going to be painful when we get straight over straight, right? When we have 7-8, his ace king never straights over straights us, which is nice. So it's probably a little bit better to play 7-8 suited than 9-8 suited. Alas, when we review it here in Pio, we'll make sure we add in 9-8 suited into our preflop ranges. So let's go to Pio then. Well, actually, let's see what happens next.
Interesting board here, right? Of course, he's got all the overpairs. I don't really like his sizing, right? I think his sizing means he's probably betting a little too often, and I think the counter to that is to just raise a little more often here. And I think our hand makes a good raise candidate. There's a lot of turns we can barrel. We've got overs, we've got backdoors.
Okay, so first thing to note is, for some reason I start talking about me not liking his sizing. It doesn't really matter whether I like his sizing or not. I think it's probably not a huge deal to use a 1/3 sizing here. I think like my preferred sizing would be maybe like a 60% size. But again, like I doubt there's much EV loss between just sort of range betting third and maybe betting a little bit more selectively with the larger size. But let's head over to Pio and see how Pio plays this flop. All right, so we're just going to get Pio set up here. And as noted, it doesn't look like I'm really defending 9-8 suited here. So in order for this to work, we're going to give ourselves some 9-8 suited. Because otherwise, the results will be meaningless here when we go to look at our actual hand. All right, let's go ahead and kick the sim off. All right, looks like we've got the accuracy all figured out here. Okay, so looks like this is almost a range bet once we go down to the smaller size. He's checking about 23% of the time. I'd be curious to know if this player is actually range betting. I imagine if he's using this sizing, you know, this seems like it's probably fairly accurate. You know what? Let's go set it to a range bet. I think range bet would more closely approximate what the pool is going to be doing. So we're going to go ahead and go force the aim position player to just bet his entire range on this flop, and we'll see how that goes. So I'm going to kick this thing off. Check. Okay, so now he's betting his whole range here, and let's see how we're meant to react. Okay, against a range bet here, We do get to raise, holy shit, we get to raise a lot. We have to raise 60% of our range. That seems insane. That seems crazy. I wonder what it was against a non-range bet. Wow, so we're just meant to go buck wild here on this board, I guess. This is pretty interesting. I guess like our range just must be worth so much. Yeah, it's a very neutral board here. We're in position's polarized, right? He's got like a pocket pair or he's got a pretty weak hand. We're, I mean, we've got trips. Does he ever have trips really? Let's check out the range explorer here. So the out of position player has quads, sometimes full house, trips. Yeah, it looks like out of position player has a pretty big nut advantage here on this board. The three better doesn't. Let's check out our equity. Yeah, in fact, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, it looks like, I mean, we both have about the same percentage of overpairs in our range. And we have trips. He almost never has trips. We have full houses. He also has full houses. But the density of trips in our range is just much higher than the density of trips in his range. And he never has quads, and maybe very rarely we do sometimes. So we do have a decent nut advantage here. I guess maybe that's why we're just check raising so often here. We're super polarized, right? So yeah, it makes sense. Our range is more polarized than his. We either have these super high EV hands or these like very worthless hands. And when that's the case, we just want to bet big if we're going to be betting. So makes sense. What's considered betting big when you're facing a bet? Raising, right? So makes sense we get to raise. I guess pretty wide just because our range is so much more polar than his. Not really sure. So here, 9-8 suited. Looks like we're mostly folding actually, but we do have a small amount of raise. So I imagine my frequencies in game were off. I was thinking like 8-9 suited would be a great check raise, but it looks like we much prefer um, sort of our one pair hands, our pocket pairs, I guess our overcards with back doors. I guess we just have so many hands that we're check raising that like 8-9 suited just doesn't have to be one, I guess. It's interesting. My natural inclination would have like been to gravitate towards a hand like 8-9 suited here as a raise candidate, but especially hearts. I wonder why hearts is raising less often than clubs and diamonds. But alas, it doesn't really matter here. We raise and he's meant to call a bunch of hands here, so he does call. And let's go to the turn.
We've got open enders. I'm not sure if bet or check is correct here. Fuck. Are we getting the right odds? 1 in 4. What do we have? 8 outs. It's really close, right? I guess we just have to fold. Fuck, man. That's a bummer. I just don't think we're getting the right odds. We have like 16 to 20% equity. We need 24% equity to call.
Okay, so in game, I say I'm not sure if better check is correct here. Let's go to Pio and find out how Pio plays the turn here. 7 of spades on the turn. Okay, we're meant to keep barreling with 80% of our range, so we're almost never meant to slow down here. I guess some of our like ace queen give ups, I wouldn't call them give ups. Some of our ace queens become checks, right? They're just a little too strong to want to be betting. Like we're ahead of some of his hands. We have a lot of equity against a bunch of his hands, like tens, things like that. Ace king off looks like we don't have it all that often, but when we do, we're just checking. and then we just barrel with so many of our hands that we check raise with. So it looks like 8-9 suited, the hand we have here, 8-9 of hearts. When we have it, which again, we should be folding more often than we were on a flop, but when we have it, it makes a decent barrel here. Interesting to note that Pio's sizing, Pio's preferring the 33% pot size here, as opposed to any of the bigger sizes. It almost never uses the bigger size. Um, that's kind of surprising to me. I would have guessed that this is a spot where we're going to be more polarized than villain, and usually when we're more polar, we would choose a larger sizing. So I guess using the 33% size just allows us to keep betting like eights, nines, tens, 8-7, 6-7. It lets us, so yeah, using the smaller size allows us to keep betting these hands. Like I guess if we only had larger sizes here, we'd have to be checking a lot more of our range. So as played, I actually choose the bigger sizing here on the turn, which Pio just doesn't ever do. So if I click here and see how he's meant to react, we're just going to be left with like no combos here on the end. Oh, he actually raises, huh? He raises, and then yeah, you can't really see what we're meant to do here. Meant to call eights, ace eight. Ace eight suited is meant to call a raise here. That's pretty crazy. Tens. Yeah, I mean, we just never really end up on this node, so we'll go to the small bet node, and we'll just count that as a mistake, a sizing mistake on my part. Looks like if I'm going to continue barreling here, I'm going to want to be barreling for the 1/3 sizing. So we do bet, and then villain decides to shove. So he should be raising queens, jacks, tens, nines. I think all of those seem pretty reasonable. I think I could see people in the pool raising those hands here on the turn. If they don't 3-bet them on the flop, of course. And then his bluffs are going to be hands like jack 10 suited, queen 10 suited, king 10 suited. A7, I guess, is a value raise. So I guess A7 is probably at the bottom of his value range here. A6, very rarely getting raised, but has a small percentage of raise here. So I guess A7 would be like the bottom of his value raising range, and then he has some bluffs to go along with it, like basically just some overcards that don't have showdown. So he does go ahead and raise, and we're meant to call off with our overpairs here, jacks, tens, half the time with nines, full frequency with eights, 7-8, 7-7 sets, pair plus straight draw, trips, interesting fives, right? I guess pair plus straight draw, yeah, and sets. So it looks like the worst hand we're calling with here is going to be like an 8-7 suited. That's surprising to me. I'm not sure I'm calling this hand in pool. Then again, like I don't think Pool's got all of these. I don't think Pool's really value betting. No, I don't think Pio's, I don't know. I guess Pio's raising range here is actually fairly natural. Ace 8, maybe not, right? Like I don't know if Pool's finding some of these. Ace 5, yeah, sure, why not? I just don't know if Pool's finding all these bluffs, but I don't have any reason to believe that Pool's deviating like massively from this. So I think it all kind of makes sense. He does elect to raise, and our hand here is a pure fold, which we did fold in game. So interestingly enough, I think we actually ended up playing that hand okay. I would say, sort of in retrospect here, first thing to note is my pre-flop play. I think apparently it's just a fold pre, and I think it has to do with the straight draws being less dominated. If we have a hand like 7-8 suited versus a hand like 8-9 suited, for instance, on 10 jack queen, we're going to be in trouble a lot when the pocket's really big and we flop a straight on 10 jack queen. So 8-9 suited, apparently not a hand I really want to be playing out of position here pre-flop. But once we do call and we face a bet at a very low frequency here, we do get to raise. So my play isn't a complete blunder. If you look at the EV of 9-10 or 8-9 suited here, you'll notice that like it's calling sometimes, raising sometimes, and folding sometimes. The only time Pio is really ever mixing three ways is when all of the EVs of each action are approximately the same and they're approximately 0. So you can see here 9-8 of hearts. The EV of raise is minus 0.01, call is 0, and fold is 0. So kind of a hand where you can't really make a huge mistake either way. But if you're always raising or always calling or always folding, you're probably losing EV or you're unbalanced in some way, right? So One thing I need to be cognizant of is keeping my raising range or my raising frequency um, in check because in game I'm probably raising this like 80% of the time, and Pio's pitching it like 90% of the time, just folding. So I'm probably a little out of line with my frequency there. All right, guys. So there you have it. There's my first Pro or Pro. I'm not sure what I'm going to call the series, but basically it'll just be me doing hand reviews and evaluating whether or not I made any big mistakes during the hand. I guess with this hand, a few mistakes really jump out at me, right? The pre-flop play, I called with the hand I should probably just never really be calling three bets with. Um, of course, there's flexibility pre-flop, so I wouldn't say it's like necessarily a huge blunder, but something to keep an eye on. And then I think my flop check raise frequency with this hand is probably a little going. I'm going a little overboard. Another place where I was deviating from optimal is the turn on the turn, my turn sizing. There's something going on with range polarizations there that I don't quite understand. In the video, I talk about our range being more polarized than villains, but in reality, we're raising a pretty merged range there. So I'm not sure I 100% understand that spot. Probably something I'll need to investigate a little bit more. So overall, we have the mistake pre-flop, um, the sort of mixing error on the flop, and then my sizing error on the turn. So I wasn't too far off of Pio, but I certainly wasn't really in line with the solver either. So let me know what you guys think. Was that pro or was that bro? Leave a comment down below. Thanks, guys.